Hey there, welcome back to That's Not Proper, and I'm your host, Corey Asuncion. Have you ever sought therapy and found in that therapy that you maybe weren't getting the results that you thought you should get? Maybe nothing really tangible, and it was difficult for you because you continued on in this therapy, yet nothing seemed to change. I suggest you listen to today's episode and hearing about a type of therapy I had never heard of before, RRT therapy. But prior to that, please listen to this message from one of my guests today, Matt Sprague.
My name is Matt. Something happened to me when I was a kid. When I tried to deal with it as an adult, I felt like I was the only one. Now I know that it has happened to a lot of other kids of all genders, and it still happens even now. I am a survivor of child sex trafficking. I know now that I am not alone, and that you are not alone. I hear you. I believe you.
On today's episode, we will be discussing a revolutionary psychotherapeutic type of therapy I had never heard of until recently. Today, husband and wife team, Matt and Kelly Sprague, are chatting with me about rapid resolution therapy, their personal experience with it, and how they now have officially become trained in RRT to help other survivors of trauma heal. Matt and Kelly, thank you for joining me today. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
You guys are in Florida, right?
Yes.
What is the weather like over there right now?
It's recently been very rainy, but very hot. Hot enough for me.
You guys get the humidity.
Yeah, lots of that.
Yeah, it goes away after the rain each day. We just go to the beach. Life is better on the beach.
I 100% agree and wish I could do the same. Where we're at in California, it's been crazy hot. So like today, the high is 96. And the house we're in is a really huge house, but it's also really old. So the AC doesn't even reach the top floor at all. So we're all just sweating our brains out over here today.
Yeah.
Actually, the next several days, it'll be like that. It is not fun. In fact, I had to lay down a bed sheet on a chair because I was afraid I was going to sweat too much on the chair. I'll sweat on the bed sheet. I can throw that in the wash, but I can't throw the chair in the wash. So, yeah, sweaty hot. Thank you again for coming on today. And I really wanted to start off first with define for me what RRT is.
So RRT, it stands for Rapid Resolution Therapy, and it was created by Dr. John Connolly. He's in West Palm Beach, Florida, and he was working as a therapist for many decades, actually, and he was discovering a lot of what was not helping his clients, what he was trained to do, but what was not helping. And over the years, he just started focusing on the small things that did seem to show some progress. And he took note of those and just collected them in his mind. And over time, as he started implementing just the things that he noticed were working, he created this system, this model of healing. And, now he calls it rapid resolution therapy. But the way it works is it speaks to the subconscious mind using storytelling and imagery. The storytelling comes from us. The imagery comes from the mind of the person who we're speaking to. So whatever images they come up with is exactly the right thing for them. And Dr. Connolly explains it like it's as if your mind has a locked box and only your mind has the key. In RRT, we help you find the key to your own box, to unlock whatever has been stuck, whatever has been bothering you, and let it out right then and there. So it is effective immediately and permanently. And that is the really special and extraordinary thing about rapid resolution therapy is that it is effective quickly, immediately, and permanently. And we have seen such transformation in the people that we've helped in their life and in their mind, that they're then able to be everything that they have always been created to be. Yeah, I think that's the gist of it. It's something that's hard to explain because it's so different than everything else. You can't compare it to any other forms of healing. It's all on its own, and it's really, really extraordinary and real, even though it sounds too good to be true.
That would be my first question. We live in a society where we like immediate gratification. And
Yes.
when you talk about therapy, you always hear about it in the sense of years of therapy. I've been in therapy for years, or we're going
Yeah.
to schedule your sessions for the next 6 months. And my personal experience with therapy many years ago was not a fan of it. I remember going every week or whatever it was and thinking
Right.
nothing's changing. And I mean, I even got to the point where I was just making things up because it was like, I don't even know why I'm here anymore. It was just ridiculous. And honestly, to be fair, there was a part of that I didn't want to be there anyhow. My parents wanted me there. But, I've
Right.
never, because of that experience, I have kind of a negative outlook on therapy because of that. And
Right.
so when I heard about this, because I also am a very impatient person, I thought, okay, hold up. Now this is different. And
Yeah.
there was a little bitty part of me that there was like, okay, I think I need to understand this more because like you said, it almost sounds too good to be true. Maybe give a little bit of backstory to your experiences prior to RRT and what led you? How did you even find RRT?
Yeah, I think I'll answer first from my perspective, and then Matt can answer from his perspective because it's very different.
Perfect.
So Matt was dealing with severe, complex PTSD and a
Mhm.
borderline personality disorder. And for about 10 years, we had been searching for anything that would help. He saw a variety of therapists, counselors, psychologists. He had inpatient stays. He tried a variety of prescription medications. He tried what seems to be every single thing that was supposed to help. He tried all of them and he never gave up. He would always try the next thing. But
Mhm.
from my perspective, I never saw any change. I never saw him getting any real help. And I saw quite a few times that the things that he tried, the therapies or the prescriptions, whatever it was, made it exponentially worse. And so that
Mhm.
made it really hard to keep trying. We knew that something needed to
Mhm.
change and that he needed help, but nothing was helping. And a lot of things were making it worse. And so we were just going one day at a time, just I call it bare knuckling life. When you just grip the steering wheel so tight because you just can't let go, but you're swerving out of control. That's what it felt like forever, just bare knuckling life. We're just making it. And then a job moved us down to the east coast of Florida. And we knew about Dr. Connolly because I had asked someone who was the director of a safe home for trafficked boys that I had connected with. And I asked her, I said, is there anyone in Florida that can help my husband? Because we're moving. Maybe there's somebody there. And she said, the only one that I think might have a chance of helping him is Dr. Connolly. She said, I don't know much about him, but I hear about him. I said, okay, I'll look it up. And it was really, really expensive to see Dr. Connolly. So we didn't go right away because, it's the money and nothing had ever worked before. So it didn't really sound worth it to spend that kind of money on something that probably I didn't think would work. But one day, things got bad enough. Again, Matt was really struggling, and I knew that it was our last chance. That if we didn't get help now, it was never going to happen. And so I emailed Dr. Connolly's office in the middle of the night, and I said, "Do you have any openings?" And he's usually very booked. He's a really busy man. He's always doing trainings. He has his own private practice. That his assistant emailed me back first thing the next morning, and she said, "Actually, we have an opening tomorrow if you can get him here." And so then I was faced with I emailed back right away and I said, "We'll take it." So I accepted this appointment. And then I thought, okay, well, that's taken care of, but now I have to find a way to pay for this. And I have to get Matt to say yes. And I have to find someone to watch our kids. I don't trust anyone with our kids, so that was probably the hardest thing. But there was one family who were good friends, and they said they would watch them as long as we needed to. We could leave in the morning, they would come back in the evening. And it didn't matter how long it took, they would watch them. And we felt safe there. And then I found a way to kind of work the numbers a little bit to be able to afford to pay for this appointment. And somehow, miraculously, Matt said that he would go. And it was the most amazing thing because he was in a bad place. And I thought, I've got this all arranged, but I don't think he'll ever say yes. And he has to willingly go. And it wasn't an enthusiastic yes. It was more like a whatever type thing, but that was good enough, right?
His response to me sounds like someone who'd maybe given up because nothing had worked. So who cares? All right, fine, whatever, I'll do it. That's what it sounds. I mean, it sounds like a normal response. If once you're given up, you're kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, totally. That's what it was. It was just like, I guess, just whatever. I don't even care, but I'll go. I think it was more like, if you want me to go, I'll go, but whatever. And so the next day we went, and it was an all day with this. Dr. Connolly blocked out the whole day. So Matt saw him for a few hours in the morning, and then we had a lunch break, and then he went back for a few hours in the afternoon. And I wasn't with him. I was just waiting. I went to the beach for the first half of the day, and then I waited in the car the second half of the day because it was a Florida rainstorm. And when Matt texted me and said he was done, I walked up to the whatever floor they were on to pick him up. And he walked out of the office and sort of down a hallway to me. And the man that was walking down the hallway towards me was a new man. He was smiling. He stood up straight. He had color in his face again. And he walked up to me and he kissed me and he smiled and he said hi, which sounds normal, but it wasn't normal for us because for the past 10 years, my husband had never been happy to see me, had never smiled at me, had never stood up straight, had never been more than like a shell of a person. To be a shell, to not be yourself, to not be who you are. And then to see him just walk out. And I didn't know how or what or why, but I knew it's okay now. I can see that he's okay now. And for the first time in a decade, there was hope for him, for us, for our marriage, for our family, for our kids. Finally, there was hope that life could get okay again. And that was just the first minute I saw him. And it only kept getting better because RRT is a progressive thing. You only do it once for the whatever the thing is, but it keeps processing and it keeps getting better without having to go again. And so for us, life just kept getting better, and not in any small way either, because that was a year ago. It more or less a year and a half ago, I think. And we went from like barely hanging on in life to now we got to choose where we wanted to live. We moved. We chose a place we wanted to live. We moved. That we haven't told anyone, but by the time you air this, people will know we just bought a house for the first time ever. We have our own business now. Our kids are happy and safe. Our family is safe. We had a baby. It was finally safe to have a baby. Everything changed. Everything was new and better. And because we knew how much it changed our life and Matt's life, I right away started going to training to become able to do this. And as soon as I went to training, I was a little nervous. I thought there's no, like John Connolly, he's the man. He can do this, but I wasn't sure I could, even after I went to the training. But I started seeing people right away. And every time it's the same. It's healing and transformation and hope and new life. And as much as I know that it sounds too good to be true, I see every time I do it, and I see in our own family that it's real, that the healing and the hope is real, and it's easy. Honestly, it's easy and quick. And what we want to do is just line people up and get people through this so that we can help as many people as possible find this healing. And it just changes not only your own life, but the whole world around you. It's so beautiful.
First of all, okay, you got me crying because, I have a partner, and
Uh-huh.
we've been together for 25 years.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine the pain of, loving someone so intimately, but seeing them in constant, continual pain and, that struggle. I'm sure you battle with feeling pain for them and the empathy, but then the frustration and maybe anger and, all the
Yeah.
struggles that both of you are combating must have been, because it's no more, astronomical. I'm floored by this. I just am still completely floored by this. So, Matt, I really want to hear, what your experience was.
So I would think, like, if you would have asked me probably 10 years ago, um, tell me about your childhood, tell me about your life, tell me, like, just give me the run of the mill, right? I think it would have been very simple. My mom and dad were married. They got divorced when I was very young, like most of people my age. I grew up in a single parent home for the most part. My mom was married to a couple different people, never worked out. I got old enough. I graduated high school. I went to college. I got married, started having kids, got a decent job. That would be pretty much it. And that would be, normal. But I think a few years ago, doing all of this normal life, I started to feel a lot of different things that I wasn't sure why. A lot of it, I guess you would call it depression or sad or things like that, which didn't make a whole lot of sense because outside of me, you would look at my life and say things seem to be really good. Like your job is going really well, your family's going well, like everything is well. Doesn't make any sense. Like if you living on the streets and these things were happening, I could see why you're sad, but it doesn't make sense. And that continued on for a few months where I felt like that all the time. Like there was, I don't know. And so I talked to the guy that I was working with, and he was my boss at the time. And it got to the point where he thought I should see some sort of therapist. I'd never really been to therapy before that. I didn't know what to expect. I guess I knew I was going to have to, in my mind, I thought I was going to lay on the couch and talk a lot and like try to experience feelings and things like that I wasn't really good at doing anyway. So I did that partially because I knew that he wanted me to do it and I didn't want to lose my job, obviously. And the other part of it was I knew that it was for Kelly that she wanted me to do that. I wasn't really sure that I wanted to do that. So as I went to this therapist, I started talking about what's going on. It really started to come out that there must have been something that happened in my past that is starting to kind of come out. So something is happening currently in your life that's touching on something that happened before, and now it's starting to kind of subconsciously starting to get into your conscious mind, if you will. So through that process and being in that therapy for uh, almost a year, just with this one particular individual, it became pretty clear that something had happened in my past, that there was some abuse, some sexual abuse, some emotional abuse, some physical abuse. Pretty much any kind of abuse that you could do to a person was happening. And through talking with him and starting to understand that what was really going on in my mind was the reason why I wasn't remembering it or I wasn't talking about it 10 years ago or 15 years ago was that it was kind of basically like kind of blocking me out of it in a way. Like I wasn't able to be dealing with it at that point. So your mind tends to do this thing where it puts it in a box and says, you're not opening this, you're not dealing with this. Maybe at some point you can. So and through seeing that therapist and I felt like the more that I talked about with him what was happening, some of the experiences that I could remember, new experiences were starting to come out. Like there were certain things I could remember about those situations, but I couldn't remember the whole thing. And then slowly but surely those things started to kind of get bigger. And then I started to realize like, oh, here's why I'm thinking of this, because I remember it more clearly now than I remembered it even a few years ago, even a few days before. And so through all of that, as it kept coming out and getting more and more out there, it then became with the responsibility of having to deal with it. Because you can't just let it all kind of come out and then say, there's nothing more to do. I have to do something with it. And that's when it got really hard for me, was trying to just basically go, oh, okay, these things happened to your past and these are fine. Now just kind of shove them all away and keep going. And I wasn't very good at that. And so it was very much it felt very self-destructive a lot of times. I did feel a lot of times like I didn't care. and I probably didn't want to deal with it. And there's, just lots of thoughts like that, I think. And as Kelly was talking about, like, there was a lot of times between us where it got so bad where we didn't know what to do. And so I would try whatever was out there. There's so many different types of therapies out there. And every single therapy, when you go to read about it or talk about it, or someone will tell you about it, they'll tell you about how great it is or how it's this and this and this and this, and you need to go and try it and do this. And I felt like for me, when I was doing these different therapies, it was getting to the point where I was talking a lot about what was happening. And then all of a sudden the hour was up or the time was up. And then it was like, go home. We'll see you in a week. Hopefully we can kind of pick back up where you were. And I found that what happened was I would go to my car to get ready to leave these various different therapies and feel so disorganized and my brain was just scattered. And it was like, go home now and try to be with your family, try to be a husband, try to be an employee, try to do all these different things. And then in the week, we'll try to pick it back up. And if you've been to therapy, you kind of know that what happens when you go back the next week is you don't pick it back up because they've kind of forgotten who you are. You kind of forgotten some of the stuff that was going on, and then all of a sudden you're really just kind of starting over. So it wasn't like, let's just pause here and we'll pick this right back up. It's more like, we'll pause here, you'll come back, and then we'll try to get back to where we were. And so for me, it felt like nothing was being accomplished. I wasn't getting anywhere. And so when we moved down to Florida, and Kelly had found out about John Connolly, and she had mentioned that I kind of just casually was like, oh, whatever, I'll try it. It did feel like that because I felt like it couldn't get worse. You know what I mean? Like at this point, how much worse could it really be? Once you've been to all these different therapies and you've done all the different things that they tell you to do, this can't be that bad. I think a lot of it was fear of not really knowing anything about it, and Kelly was trying to sort of explain it, but she didn't quite know all about it. But I can't tell you everything he did because it's the way that he does it and the way that he moves through it. It's like Kelly said, it kind of changes your subconscious, not your conscious. So I spent maybe 10 minutes kind of just telling him everything I kind of told you in a different way, of course, and said, hey, here's kind of what I'm dealing with. And he kind of said, okay, that's enough. We don't need to talk about that. Let's talk about this. And he shifts it from that to this. And then I'm telling you, a few hours later, I walked out going, I don't even quite understand what was happening. Like, I couldn't tell you what happened. I remember getting in the car, Kelly drove home, and it was an hour and a half drive home. And it was just this like shift in my mind. It wasn't something that I did, that I was mentally consciously doing. It was something that was happening subconsciously in the few days following that. Because every time you leave a therapy, you can kind of feel good. Or you can kind of feel like, oh, it's going to be different this time. This time it's going to feel a lot better. I'm going to be moving forward. And then you find yourself in a few days going, no, it's not. I'm back at exactly where I was before I saw this person. But it didn't feel like that with seeing John. It wasn't even, and it wasn't like he was giving me like little tips and tools to do. Like I know in some therapies, they'll kind of say things like, hey, when you start to feel a little overwhelmed, sit over in the corner and count to 10 or breathe or do these things. Like it wasn't even like, because you and I both would know that when you start to get overwhelmed, it's too far for you to go, okay, hold on, let me consciously think here to go sit down in the corner and try to like get myself centered. You don't do that. You just continue escalating. And so like it wasn't like he was giving me like tips or tools or these kind of things. It was a complete change. So the things that would happen that might have caused pain or disturbances before, they just didn't. They didn't affect me in that same way. It felt like everything was brand new. And after having that experience and then living it out for a few weeks afterwards, it was really clear that it definitely changed something.
Well, what I was just going to ask real quick, I wanted to find out, do you feel like it was, because I'm trying to grasp and understand it a little bit, and I have a feeling it's one of those things that you don't fully understand until you experience it, but it almost reminds me of training yourself in a sense to have a different mindset. Is that similar? I know that lots of times we go in reactively into things or based on the previous way we've done things, whether it be thought, word, or deed. But it almost makes me think of training you to have a mindset about whether it is things, your thoughts or your words or your actions. Was it something similar to that?
So the way it works is you don't have to do anything. It's not that now we gave you a tool with which you can cope with the thing that bothers you. The thing that bothered you will have been eliminated and neutralized. So you don't have to think about it. It just won't be there anymore. And in the session, you would be a pretty passive participant because the storytelling and the imagery and the words that are used speak to the subconscious in such a way that it's sort of like brain remapping, reprocessing things so that everything goes through a new filter now. And it just doesn't bother you anymore. No, it's
Said brain remapping, and I actually have a girlfriend who actually used to do that and used to talk about it a lot, but it was, something kind of new because this was like 10 years ago or something like that. That's something that you didn't really hear about very often. But to me, honestly, it makes more sense, if especially when your mind is conditioned to do the same thing and you've gotten kind of set in that, it makes sense that you need a rewiring in a sense of what's going on in there. With regards to RRT, now I know that, well, at least my understanding is a large focus is for those who have experienced trauma. And I know, like, for example, you had shared Matt and what he struggled with regards to PTSD, and I believe you said borderline identity disorder. Is RRT for more severe things like that, or can it be used for maybe someone who's just an angry person who's always pissed off about something? You know what I mean? Is it something that can be used for things that are viewed by some as less traumatic?
Yeah, totally. So RRT is one of those things that's good for what ails you, like old people say, oh, it's good for anything. It's good for what hurts. And a lot of people have found great success for psychiatric problems like Matt, PTSD, borderline identity disorder, depression, OCD, things like that. Yes, very effective. We see people who just say, I don't even know what's wrong, but I just don't like the way I feel. Can you help me? Yes. So it is good for anything that has been troubling you, bothering you, or feels dysfunctional to you, something that you would like to be different. It's used a lot for trauma, someone who's experienced trauma, only because there's so many people that have experienced trauma and it is so very helpful for that. But it's good for anything that has been troubling your mind.
Now, Matt, how do you notice the difference in you now?
I think a lot of it is that traumatic things that have happened in my past, and it wasn't just once, it was a constant thing that kind of condensed itself down into this one big thing. A lot of it would stem from, or it would feel like certain things would kind of trigger me, if that makes sense. Like a lot of times people say things like, oh, watch out, don't read this because there's a trigger warning that if you've experienced any sort of childhood, etc., it could cause you to feel a certain way or bring back memories that you don't want to deal with, kind of things. So I think for me, for a lot of what it changed in that was that I can talk about my past and what happened to me without feeling like it's happening all over again. So a lot of what would happen to me in PTSD and the things that were going on was that something might happen in my day-to-day life that could make me feel those things again, as if they're happening right now. So it wasn't like, okay, I remember that happened to me when I was a kid. I know that. That's okay. And I'm now here. Instead, what happens is what happened to me as a kid is happening right now. So my attitude would change. My response to things would change. I would almost act childish in such a way. So I think one of the things that I've noticed is I'm able to look back at those things, or I'm able to see certain things, or hear certain things, or even smell certain smells, and say, I I know that those things happened to me in the past, but they're not happening now. And so it's a bigger shift of just my brain is able to process that I can't change what happened. So no matter what I do, there's nothing that can be done about what already happened. It already happened. But instead of it constantly feeling like it's happening over and over again, I'm now able to say, okay, that's there, and now we're here. So I think that's the biggest shift, and that's the biggest change that I've noticed.
Well, and since the triggers don't affect him anymore. He's able to be present, which was never possible before. So when he said he felt like he would act childish, what he means by that is, and what I saw was when Matt would be triggered, he became little kid Matt again. So the man in front of me wasn't, my 35-year-old husband. He would disassociate, and suddenly he was a 5-year-old little kid who was being abused or tortured or hurt or whatever the thing was. He became someone else. And so when you're constantly shifting between 5-year-old you and 35-year-old you and being triggered and trying to be normal and trying to get therapy and trying to be a dad, it's not possible to do and be all those things. But since he wasn't triggered anymore, he was able to be present and see his life for what it was in the moment. And that changed everything.
Truly impressed by you guys because I would venture to assume that a lot of marriages wouldn't survive this. Not to say that, a spouse wouldn't feel grief or sorrow, but it must have been a battle. And so I'm thankful for the two of you and very impressed by the two of you with regards to this. I am still blown away by RRT, but I definitely have this feeling I'm going to go sit here and talk to other people about it. I think about some traumatic experiences in my life as a child that I just talked to my partner about this recently. I detach. I detach as if it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
That's how I have dealt with it for some of these experiences occurred 43 years ago. And so I detach because that's exactly how I survive. But they're coming up, they come up. And so I'm thinking about this and I'm like, well, because I'm not going to therapy. I personally, anybody who goes to therapy, that's good for you. It just doesn't work for me. And so this is very interesting. And I'm going to start telling like family members about it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about now how you guys have your own RRT therapy, and it is called Reclaiming Light. And so now how does that work, especially right now in the middle of this whole quarantine thing works? Do you guys have people come in, or are you doing it like via calls? How does that work right now?
Yeah, so our private practice is called Reclaiming Light, and it's based on saying, helping people become who they were always meant to be, that light inside of you, who you really are, get it back. Reclaim your light. So that's the whole meaning behind the business name Reclaiming Light. And actually this is interesting to you probably. We are not therapists. We're not licensed therapists or social workers. We're able to offer this as pastoral care because we don't want to go back to school to become licensed because we already know how to do this and we know that it works. And a way for us to be able to, because Matt and I are both ordained ministers, we can offer this as pastoral counseling. Okay. And so we're doing phone calls right now in this age of coronavirus where people are doing, social distancing and everyone's trying to be safe in this uncertainty. We do phone sessions, and the phone sessions work just as effectively as an in-person session. And it's oftentimes a lot easier for people. It's less threatening to be on a phone instead of sitting in front of someone. And you can do it from anywhere. You can call us from anywhere in the world and have a healing conversation with us in just a couple hours. And we believe that life will very quickly and very drastically change for the better.
I'm going to be linking the website in the podcast notes, but what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Go to our website, www.reclaiminglight.net. You can read more about us, about our story. There are a lot of testimonials on there, information about RRT, and just go to the contact us page. It sets you up with an email. We check it every day, and we will then set up a time to call, do a free consultation with you. It's usually about 15 minutes, and then we can move forward to setting up a time to have a conversation with you. And we don't call it sessions. Maybe appointments would be a good word, but we call it healing conversations because that's all it is. You just talk to us on the phone. We ask you a few questions just to get the gist of what's been bothering you, but it's not very detailed at all. You don't have to go through a retelling of trauma or stuff that bothers you. We just need some bullet points of it. And then we guide the conversation again with storytelling and imagery, checking in with you all the time. And we won't let you off the phone until we've helped you in a big way. So, don't, it's not one of those things where you have to wonder if it's going to work or not. Now, there's no guarantee, just like any other therapy or healing model, there's no guarantee because it doesn't work for 100% of the population. We can't guarantee that it's going to work, but almost every single person we have talked to has had drastic transformation in their life.
Well, I think that your story alone is so significant that it's relatable, one, but it's the fact that you're doing this now after you have gone through this and experienced such an extreme and drastic change only for good. It to me sounds worthwhile looking into it at minimum, Yeah. You guys also have a Facebook page, is that correct?
Yeah, Facebook is also Reclaiming Light. We are on Instagram, it's RRT Reclaiming Light, and then Twitter is Reclaiming Light. So we're trying to cover all the social medias. So that's not really a word, but and it's not really I think we're doing all those social media things just as another place for people to check in and sort of cyber stalk us because people have a lot of questions. Again, it sounds too good to be true sometimes. So I update it almost every day. I post a little something just as another way for people to go, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to look into them. It's another way for people to get to know us.
Well, social media is honestly necessary in this day and age anyhow, but I know I'm a stalker, so I know that if I'm trying to figure out something about anything or someone, the first place I'm looking is social media. So I think that that's actually a fabulous idea. I just want to thank you both for coming on. I really appreciate you and I'm thankful for you. And I am so thankful that you have this amazing, victorious story that you came through the fire. And I really, truly want to thank you for sharing your story and your journey with me today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of That's Not Proper. If you are interested in connecting with Matt and or Kelly Sprague, check out their website at reclaiminglight.net, as well as their Facebook page, Reclaiming Light. I'm going to include the links directly to both of those pages in the show notes. And check out That's Not Proper on Instagram and Facebook at That's Not Proper. And remember to check out my website at that'snotproper.com and tune in next week for next week's episode of That's Not Proper.